Now, John Spencer is a retired US Army major and chair of urban warfare studies at the Madison Policy Forum. He joins me now from Colorado Springs in Colorado. And thanks for doing so, sir. Before I get to your area of expertise, I wanted to ask you, how disturbing is it that a nuclear power plant would be the site of Russian incoming fire, munitions going into a power plant like that?
That's a global disaster waiting to happen. It is very scary, especially firing anywhere near any type of weapon. That's just ridiculous.
You are an expert on urban warfare. That is the big fear in terms of what could be coming. If the Russians assault Kyiv with heavy weapons, then a no-holds-barred entry, what would that look like in a kinetic sense?
It would look like hell on earth, to be honest. I mean, we're just seeing the very start of this, the indiscriminate bombing of civilian areas with the hope that there's some defenders in there, not following international law of ensuring there's distinct, making sure there's no civilians and whatever you're striking. I mean, it's Russian doctrine, unfortunately, and we're going to see this intensify. And just think about the Battle of Grozny. The Russians started on day one firing 3,000 artillery rounds a day. When they really faced resistance, it ended up being about 30,000 rounds a day.
Wow, 30,000 a day. I actually covered the retaking of Mosul from ISIS in Iraq, and that sort of starkly illustrated how fighting in a city can be, incredibly damaging to infrastructure, obviously, and far more likely to result in high civilian casualties. I think at Mosul, some estimates were 10,000 civilians died. Just describe how bad it can get and why.
Yeah, so I think this will be 10 times what the Battle of Mosul was, just because of the resistance you're fighting. In the Battle of Mosul, it was 5,000, maybe estimate 10,000 untrained terrorists, and it still took 100,000 forces backed by the most powerful and law of armed conflict abiding air power in the world, and it still took them 9 months in destroying most of the city. This could get in the tens of thousands of civilian casualties and destroy every building there if the Ukrainians put up the resistance. But for me, more importantly, and what I hope, I stand with Ukraine, is that they can make Russia pay a huge, huge price.
Right. Yeah, and to that very point, the Ukrainians are the defenders, and I know you've written extensively about many of the advantages of being in that position. What are the main advantages? What would Ukrainian forces be doing to prepare, or should be doing to prepare?
Yeah, so the defense is always the strongest form of war, has always been. And the urban defense, 10 times that. They can prepare every street. They can block every street, put guns in every window hidden, and just make it impossible for the Russians to come in without fear. The Russians fear urban combat, and that's why they're going to bomb it, unfortunately, a lot, because all soldiers don't want urban warfare. So the inside of Kiev, if I was there, building the barriers, ensuring that they have protection, digging so they can go underground when the bombing starts, or picking out which building they're going to be in, picking out which building they're going to shoot from. I mean, the resistance is amazing, but it's so powerful. I don't believe the stories. I mean, I've studied this for over a decade, and I can give you all kind of historical examples. If the Ukrainians fight, Kiev can hold.
That's incredible analysis. I do want to ask you this, though, before we go. There's a lot of talk about Russia's thermobaric weapons, I mean, cluster munitions as well, which they've already used. But briefly, what are these thermobaric weapons? What potential applications in an urban or city environment?
Yeah, so they're thermobaric. Some people call it a vacuum bomb, just because what a thermobaric does when it hits the ground, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room, out of the person's lungs, and then fills it with fire. So some people call them a flamethrower weapon, but they're thermobarics. They're advanced technologies meant to destroy things like tanks and big vehicles in the open. They're not meant for urban terrain. So if that was fired into urban terrain, which it will be, and it was in the first Battle of Grozny, it just melts concrete, melts metal, and just, I mean, it is a cruel and unusual weapon to use in urban terrain.
just horrific to contemplate. Yeah, this sort of warfare could be on the horizon, so it's great to have you in to get your expertise on this. John Spencer, Major, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up here on CNN Newsroom, the Russian people are getting a warped